Welcome, chapters 10, 11, and 12. We're going to look at biometrics, total access control, and chain link fences. So I said we're going to take a look at how biometrics works, the different types of biometrics, how they work, why they work. First, then we're going to look into access control, which I know you're going to take a course on anyway. I think it's 531. And then the last one is physical putting up a chain link fence. What does it actually do? It's more than just what it looks like. It helps prevent theft from anyone walking around. So let's get started. Objectives for biometric, access control, and the reinforcement. So chapter 10. What is biometrics? Right? It goes back actually much further than we think it does. A little history. It goes back to the Chinese, back in the early aspect of the Chinese getting involved. They actually dating it back to the 1500s, where they actually would take etchings of people to make sure who it was. But biometrics is voice, eye, fingerprint, handwriting analysis. Makes up a little of everything. That's something that we have on it that's unique to us. As I said, this found out a long time ago. This isn't new. What we've done is we've automated it so that your smartphones can have facial recognition, fingers. So technology has allowed us to take advantage of it. But it goes back, very long time. In the early 1900s to the 50s, people would actually draw out fingerprints. In the 1924, the FBI started using fingerprints. They realized it's not just fingerprints, ears also are unique, the way your ear looks. That is one reason why when you ever see mugshots, there's always a front view and side view, because the ear and nose are unique. They want to make sure they capture it. So these are some of the different things. In 2001, after 9/11, the Department of Homeland Security started a database collecting everything. And so that's kind of where we come, right? Everything is now up in the databases. Actually, India has one of the largest databases of biometrics. But it's basically to make sure we know who we are. And the companies can use that to help identify who we are, to make sure that only certain people get into our facilities, right? That's the whole purpose of this. It's used as a layer of password protection. Back in the earlier days, you wouldn't have, before computers, people would know who you were, that was it. So now with everything going on, hacking, multi-factor authentication. I have one school that I work for, we actually have to put in a passcode, and just to get to the passcode from on our phone, we have to use a fingerprint to open the application. So it's not just putting in a code, a password and a code, it's actually password, code, and your fingerprint. So these are the things that we're going to look at today. So what are the characteristics? There's 5 features, 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And then we're going to take advantage of these that we can. Some behavioral biometrics: writing, walking, typing speed, handwriting analysis. And here's the thing: they gotta be reliable, unique, and universal. As we look at everything, it's not just one thing. It's a couple different things that we want to make sure we review. So the palm print basic uses the hand, your lines in your palm to make sure that we can see who we are. Iris cameras detect random patterns within the iris recognition, fingerprints, and all these are used in some way, shape, or form nowadays to make sure that, hey, this is how we can capture to make sure we are. Hand scanners and facial recognition. I mean, the iPhone, right? Facial recognition just to get into your iPhone. So they're used every day. My phone, I use my finger. Multiple fingers are set up. But again, it's a simple way to make sure that the person is who they say they are. Voice recognition is another way to get into it. And again, it just takes your voice, puts it on file, and makes sure that we have it. And the smart card or some different things. Let's see. Fingerprint, we talked about earlier, the fingerprints have been around since the early 1900s. They realized that every finger is unique, and artists would track them down and would write them down, draw them, and this way we'd be able to find out. And again, this is what we've been doing, hand recognition, the iris scanner. DNA is also another big part of it. Today, DNA is a big part of any investigation to make sure they are who they say they are. It helps a lot with crimes, as we can see that. Some future aspects of biometrics, where is it going? Obviously, it's used on our smartphones, mobile devices, computers, workstations, homeland security. As I said in the past, server rooms can use biometrics, your fingerprint, your handprint, iris. It just depends on what they want to implement. They all are very accurate today, so finding one the most accurate just depends on what you want to look at. But they all work. It helps protect, to make sure we identify is the best way to do it. It identifies who we are and where do we want to go. Chapter 11, Access Control, Systems and Identification Badges. So what is access control? We're going to look at the security, access control systems, and protocols that are used. Again, we want to make sure we identify who's there and what protocols do we have if they're not. Right? This is what it comes down to. We want to make sure that everyone is who they say they are, and especially we're talking about physical security, who's coming into the building. In the past, some type of ID, a federal government. When we go to residency, you got to bring a federal ID. We look at you, we look at your picture, and it's good, right? In the past, you would use your card. But this is what we're trying to do. How do we make sure that you are who you say you are as we move along? And again, one of our goals is restricted areas, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Anyone can come into the building, but who can get into certain areas? And as I talked about, one of the companies I worked at, every department had their own doors, and if you weren't on the approved list, you couldn't get in there unless someone let you in, and then it was registered also. But we're going to use some of these different things as we look at what we want to do. Enforcement of security measures, inclusion of unauthorized personnel, intensifies controls in the area requiring special protection. Again, what areas require special protection? Our servers, our data centers, the accounting. These areas you don't want people wandering in randomly. You want to make sure you exclude anyone who doesn't belong there, and we prevent anyone from getting in. And we only allow the authorized personnel, right? There's different, we have access lists that we can find, designated restrictions we can have. So the degrees of security, depending on what we're trying to control, who we want in certain areas. Restricted areas can be, as I mentioned, computer rooms, control rooms that we have to watch out for. And it's not just the rooms in the general area of it. Also, we want to make sure that we have it because we don't want anyone to break in or cause any damage. So we want to make sure we determine what's going on to prevent terrorism, vandals, theft. There's so many different things that we need to look at. Degrees of control, we want to make sure that they have the right personnel in there. Limited access, exclusion, making sure that only the certain people can get in and those other ones cannot. Why do we want it? Subversion activities, protection against actions that adversely affected the national defense, not applicable against common pilferage, must be designated in written management, must have warning signs. So these are some of the things that we want to make sure that we have in place. Restrictions and considerations to include considerations, survey of the analysis of installation, size and nature of where it is, how sensitive it is, and evaluate security. So those are some of the areas that we want to look at. We also want to look at parking areas. Where do people park? How safe are parking areas? How many people can fit in? Do they need a gate? Are there fences and windows and lit and cameras? You know, because as we drive around, someone can get in with a car. We shouldn't even let them into the building if they're not what we need, what we want there. Yeah, that's one of the first lines of defense is the driveway or parking. We want to make sure that the vehicles are belong. And some of the different things we're going to do is make sure we have limited number of access points so we can control who comes in and out, gates, sometimes with guards to make sure that they're there. We don't want people just driving up to the building if we can prevent it. Employee screening. How do we screen our employees? How do we know who they say they are? Do we do the verifications? If they say they went to a certain school, do we contact that school? These are some of the different things. Security questionnaires. Have they ever been arrested? Character associations. Suitability for employment. Can they do the job? A lot of times people put references. Do we check them to make sure they are who they say they are? So these are some of the different things that we want to also put in for screening of employees, especially if you're state police, former employers, credit agencies, schools, and references. Make sure you do your due diligence. Sometimes people do have a tendency to put schools they probably didn't go to on their resume, public records, and now even with social media. Is another way to ensure that the people are who they say they are. Identification systems, and once they're hired, what do? We have personal recognition, making sure that they're in the system and everything's right. We have cards and IDs, could have their names on it, their pictures. So these are some of the different things that we can have. A person, a single badge to get into a thing. We can give them badges, cards, and badges. If there's multiple people, you might want to give cards and badges out so that they can use those to get in and out of the building. Multiple cards, greatest degree of security, because instead of having a specific marking on the cards, it's donated permission to enter very restricted areas. So again, we're trying to limit who can get into our building and do stuff. Once they're in, individuals can be recognized, need to enter the establishment, list on an access control. And this is much different than what we do with permissions on our servers. Someone can have access to a certain area, a building, but they might not have access to all the rooms. And the same thing we do with on our servers is some people can enter a shared drive but only see certain material. And it's the same type of concept. We want to try to limit people from getting to where they don't need to be. Need to know only. Again, the single card is permission to enter specific areas based on specific designated or recognized letters, numbers, or particular colors, blue, green, or red. So again, these are only areas, wide areas for a lot of people. We don't have to have a lot of people around. So we have that going on. Cards and exchanges. 2 cards, badges, contain identification photos. Each card has different background colors. Overprint. A card is represented at the entrance to a specific area in exchange for a second card, which is worn carried in that area. Individual processes on the second card occurs while the barrier is there. So basically, you can get in the building. When you get in, you might get a different card. This way, it allows us to have different information only for that area, short time. Think of going to a concert. You can get into the concert, but you can't get behind stage. You're going to have a very specific badge to get you behind stage. And that's the kind of the concept here. You can get into the building, but you can't do much once you're there. The multi-card system and exchange the entrance, info identification. So this will have your information on it, very restricted areas, provide exchange the entrance, and maintained at each area. So if you walk in and out, they know exactly everyone who's in that particular area. Building a system, coded devices, credentials, and we have different ways. So we can have coded devices that we can have. Ideal for highly sensitive situations. Coded device. Such as mechanical or electronic keypads and combinations. Credentials, device such as a magnetic strip, and biometrics. Access control and ID systems base their judgment factor on remote capabilities through routine discriminating devices, positive ID. Ideally, for highly sensitive areas, controlled processes, one technique dimension comparison, dimensions of full hand, compared that is stored. Reinforced security, wide range of considerations we want to take into effect. Again, the cards and badge specification designation of where, who can get where, limitations based on the bearer, required for presentations when entering and leaving, should be worn or carried on, what to do in case if it's lost or damaged, disposition, and prerequisites for reissuing a badge. Right? These are some of the different things that we have to look at. If an employee loses their badges, there should be a cost to replace. When an employee is fired, who retrieves their badge? If the badge is stolen, who is responsible? If the badge is borrowed and unauthorized, what is the ramifications? Ensure the database has the updated information. Identify access levels and authorization process for all badges. Consider all potential vulnerabilities and risk that we want to look at. Visitors must be with an escort. Who's an escort? Someone who's responsible to make sure that these people go where they need to go and that they're not wandering the halls. Ensure the visitor stays within a relatively area. approved at the least 24 hours in advance so that anyone can follow up. Where needed, prepare an agenda, measure to recover visitor's badge, and physically secure security information. We also want to establish authority for admitting visitors. What level can they be admitted? Who's going to be there? What availability do they have? Positive ID of visitors, contact to validate visit, visitor registration forms, visitor ID, and again, it should be done in advance to make sure that everyone is there. Before anyone allowing a visitor, contact the person being visited, verify the visitor's identification, issue a badge, complete registration form, and make sure there's an escort as we're walking around. VIP, very important. Person. Again, they can have restrictions for this. Consider the coordination, 24 hours, agenda. If they are of an importance, who's making sure that they're getting where they need to be? Are they opening everything up beforehand to ensure that the people get there? Other enforcement, cleaning teams, make sure you go around and get any of the information that's there. DOD employees, normal operation, enforcement measures that we need. Enforcement measures. The most vulnerable link in any ID system is its enforcement. Security forces must protect in performing their duties. Some of these measures: designate alert and tactful security, ensure that the personnel process quick perception, good judgment, requiring entry controls, formalizing standard procedures and following the procedures, prescribing a uniform method of handling and wearing security ID badges, designate entry and exit control points, providing lighting control points. We talked about that. Enforcing access control measures by educating the forces and employees. These are all the things that we need to do. We can have the great systems in place, but if we don't follow them, they're not going to work. And that's one of the biggest things that we have. People don't always follow the procedures that we have. Access control, alert personnel at entry points. Ensure quick perception of good judgment, frequently and irregular checks. That's what we want to make sure we follow. Control procedure, accurate written record logs, authentication of record logs, periodically inventory by managers, prompt invalidation of lost badges, controls within restricted area, the two-person rule, making sure that they are. Methods of verifying, identifying that, standard operating procedures, signing in, signing out, duress code, simple word or phrase to alert the security issue, making sure it's commonly known, an exercise word, phrase during normal conversation to alert that there's a problem, need planning and rehearsal. Again, we have the systems in place. We want to make sure everyone has that. How often is our records, our access control rosters updated? Are they updated on a daily basis? Depending on the sensitivity of it, they'll be updated even more. Anytime a change is made, we can be notified what's happening. Make sure the escort is chosen because of the ability to accomplish tasks, knowledge of the area, may be on guard or form area visited, local regulations and SOPs, personnel on access lists may be admitted without an escort. Again, what is our procedure and what are we trying to do? Two-person rule, never leave a person by themselves. There's always a second person in the room with them. to make sure that the people are always being watched. Also, what is the procedure for packages? What comes in or goes out? So what are our standard operating procedures to ensure that packages that are arriving and departing are handled with care and the sensitivity that they need, and they are getting to where they need? Another thing we need to look at is the standard operating procedures. We make sure point of view registration, temporary decals or ID on visitor vehicles, are they getting loaded onto the right vehicle? How often, when a vehicle pulls in, if it's not known, what type of inspections happening on the vehicle, that we need to ensure that the vehicles have, whether they're privately owned vehicles or by a organization, and what's being inspected on them, right? Are they on the list? Should there be assigned someone to the truck to make sure that they're following the procedures and going where they need to be? Some challenges that we want to look at may not have perimeter fence, making sure we'll talk more about fences in the next chapter, but having that physical fence helps prevent anything from just wandering onto the property. To provide security measures but may not have necessary assets. Early warning system, guards are crucial, funding must be set aside, and improvising by the necessary outcomes. Building design. How is our building created? Where is there, how many entrances and accesses do we have? How do we prevent people from getting in who don't belong there? The more entrances we have, the more windows we have, the more vulnerable our system is. So we want to make sure that we have the best material we can by laying it out in advance instead of waiting until taking over and having that layered security system. We have the outer layer, fences, then we have the inner layer, which should be the biometrics, mirrors, middle layer, exterior of the building, interior layer, the lobbies, turnstiles, handicap gates, emergency doors. These are all the areas we want to look at. Access cards help us make sure that the people can only get in when they can, and we know who they are. These should not be shared, and we need to make sure it comes with training. Whether it's a magnetic strip card, there's all different cards. You're going to get into the door to make sure that it's there. The WeGAN card, which has the magnetized wire, it's inserted into the readers. Again, this is a little bit better. They last a little bit longer. Biometrics, you don't leave home without it. Your fingerprint, palm, hand geometry, retina, whatever it is. These are some methods that we can put in to make sure that only the right people are getting into the areas that they need. Smart cards, same type of thing. Dual technology cards, whether they're magnetic, RFID, devices that we can use. And again, closed circuit TV, badges. You can have different badges for the colors, how long they've done service, what departments, so it's easy to identify someone who might not belong in a certain area. Some questions and concerns: what happens if they lose a badge, who retrieves their badges, process, database, and all that. All right. Let's jump to Chapter 11, Chain Link Fences. So the chapter discusses the security fences, including the different types of fences and standards for security. The design features, materials, specifications are laid out. Chain link's functions. What is the purpose of a chain link? Gives notification of a boundary, assists in controlling and screening crowds, secures the area, provides a zone for installing intrusion detection, CCTV, deters the casual intruder, and shows intent to intruder to try to gain access, right? So the fence is not just there, it does have psychological, demonstrates the intent of the intruder, causes delays if someone wants to get in over the fence, reduces the number of security guards if they have to get over the fence. And again, how big is our fence? And we'll talk more in detail that. It's also a psychological deterrent, right? People walk by, they see a fence. Chances are the average person isn't going to go past it. Reduces the number of security guards because the fence is keeping the people out. There's less area to maintain. Demonstrate corporate concern for security and cost-effective method of it's relatively cheap. Let's see, security planning. So the chain link fence enhances the goals of good security planning. In-depth security planning takes into consideration the mission, function, environmental concerns, threats of local areas. The ABCD method aids in security. Chain link fence assists in the use of other security equipment, such as use of intrusion. Chain link fences can be employed. B, a barrier to security. The building, chain link fences, walls, temporary checkpoints. Control, they support the physical security. Chain link fences are barriers, and so people can't just wander up. You can have just the entrance gates, and it deters people. Guards, lighting, checkpoints, protocols, right? These are some of the different areas of what goes into it. The ABC method reinforces and supports each other. It's also a deterrent and a barrier if needed. Sufficient obstacles are created to prevent the intruder from obtaining information that is being worked on during the day and then controlled at night on weekends. It keeps in mind the chain link fence is a common denominator that will reduce overall risk, secure the environment, and reduce security costs if designated and properly set up correctly. Ensure the effectiveness of it. It's recommended that maintenance programs are developed. These are some standards you can look at. If you want to look up the standards to give you a guideline. Again, there's no reason to start from scratch. We can take all this information we have and look at the standards so we don't have to start from scratch. What is a chain link fence made up of? Line posts, end posts, corner posts, gate posts, and if required, a top, mid, and bottom or brace rail. Wind, we have some guidelines. Wind guideline, choose the line of post, the post size, spacing, fabrication, what everything goes into it. It's not just, let's just put it up. Let's look at how we put it up correctly. Here are some different gauges that you want to look at. What are you trying to protect, right? The 11 gauge, approximately 120 in diameter, good for about 850 pounds. 9 gauge, 1200, and 6 gauge, 2,000 pounds, right? That's the breaking strength. So these are the different things we want to look at. Obviously, the bigger we go, or the lower gauge we go, the more money it costs, and that depends on what we want to look at. We also have the mesh sizes. Standard mesh that is used in most home is a 2-inch mesh. 1 inch is also available in 3/8. These are more where we want that. The smaller mesh is difficult to climb, makes it harder to get in. The heavier gauge is more difficult to cut. So you got to weigh out what do you want to put in. Mesh sizes are different sizes are available. The normal industry is 2 inches, 9 gauge. But if we want extremely high, 3/8 and 11 gauge. Just helps us to maximize our material. Gates should be properly constructed. It's usually a cantilever gate. And again, there are standards that we should follow, but we want it as small a gate as possible. If we don't need a 6-foot gate, don't put one. We want to try to limit the size of the gate, especially if there's one for cars or trucks and pedestrians. The gate should be only as big as needed. This will help reduce anyone from getting in. If we're trying to have control people coming in, we want a narrower gate so only one person at a time can get in to help limit it. Same with the car, reduce the possibility of larger cars, trucks getting in. This will help us protect everything that's going on. Let's see what else. Designs that we want to take into account. Height, eliminating top rail. Do we want to add barbed wire, bolt cutters, razor sharp, signage, color chain link? So these are all the different features that we can consider as we're putting a fence up. Again, what are we trying to protect? What is our cost? And how much are we trying to save? We don't want to put in more than what we of a value. We could put in some great walls, but we want to make sure that we keep it as reasonable as possible. We have the installation of a fence, what levels of security, site conditions, geographic location, soils, and temperatures. Again, there are standards, the ASTM F567 and the CLFMI. Make sure that we have the proper fence. And the bottom one is for wind load. There are going to be days it's going to be extremely windy. Make sure it is met to meet that. The inspection of it, making sure it's built to the code, but also that the maintenance of it, that we walk around and make sure that it is built to the proper standards that we have requested. Again, these are some of the different standards, the inspections that we need to go, and what do we need to do.